All right, good day, class. Today we're going to be talking about the election of 1896 and about the African Americans in the South and poor white people in the South. Their treatment. We're going to be talking about the 15th and 14th Amendment a little bit and how they play a role in the treatment of African Americans in the South during the Industrial Revolution. So, before we begin, if you have the packet, great. If you don't, make sure you get some lined sheet of paper and that you put on the side warm up notes and question and answer, so that way I can see where each section is. Okay, so without further ado, let us begin. All right, so here is your warm up picture. First off, analyze the picture. There isn't much to it, so your list of things you see should not really be too long. But again, go through it, look at it. Then the other question is, what's going on? What do you think is happening? The thing on the bottom, it says expulsion. Now, you should know what the word expulsion means, but if you don't, it basically means to kick off. All right, kick out of whatever it may be. So here it's a railway car. So somebody's kicked out of the railway car. Your job for the second question is basically to interpret the picture. Do you think the artist supports the person getting kicked off, or do they not support it? Okay, so there you go with that. So the election of 1896 was crucial because here's the thing. William Jennings Bryan, this guy basically was on the side of the people. He realized that people were living in squalor. Their jobs really sucked. They basically had poor living condition, no food. Everybody in the family was working. The husband, the wife, the kids, even the littlest kids were working. Some of them in the coal mines, believe it or not. So the thing is, he understood what they were going through. He saw it, and he ran on a campaign of ending this. This was great news for the people, but this was bad news for the business people. Uh, and the thing is, he, unlike some politicians, he actually meant what he said. So when he's saying, I'm going to end this, I'm going to end that, these businesses are going to basically pay for all this stuff. And they knew that he meant business. And that really scared a bunch of these companies that were large, that had monopolies. So people like Carnegie, Rockefeller, J.P. Morgan, they were kind of like scared because this guy may actually do it, and people were going to vote for him. So William Jennings Bryan, he traveled thousands of miles, and in 14 weeks he gave about 600 speeches. That is an average of 6 speeches per day. Now each speech could be something different. It could be 20 minutes and it could be up to an hour and a half. So imagine doing that, constantly shaking hands, meeting people, going from one place to the other, uh, on train, things like that. So he was a busy man. Now, the business people, they basically said, you know what? We need somebody who basically who supports us. And William McKinley was one of those people. He supported big business. And the thing is about him, he actually had somebody in his cabinet who was part of the business aspect. Now, the business leaders would basically tell their workers, if Brian wins and he does what he says he's going to do, then that's going to hurt our business. And if it hurts our business, the people who buy from us, they're going to suffer. And then those businesses I buy from them, they're going to suffer. So it's a kind of a domino effect. This is what they're telling the workers, the top business people. And then they would tell them, if we lose, you know, the election and uh, this guy Brian does what he says, we're going to start laying off some people because, hey, we're not going to lose our money. You know, the people who are going to suffer is you. We're going to either cut you off, let you go, or we're going to reduce your pay. That really scared a lot of people, a lot of the workers. Now, there was one story about an employer basically telling his people, hey, if you vote for William Jennings, Brian, uh, don't even bother to come to work tomorrow. In a sense, you vote for him, you're fired. Now, at that time, a lot of people could not just say, you know what, fine, I could pack up and move somewhere else and get another job. They couldn't. They didn't have the money. You know, they were already settled and established. So life was difficult for them at that point, and they couldn't just pick up and go somewhere else. So they had to stick with what they had, even if that job was lousy and they're being threatened to have long hours, horrible working conditions. They had no choice. They had to stay. So at the end, McKinley wins, and Brian is defeated. Okay, so after the Reconstruction era, life was pretty bad for the African Americans. The thing is, once the troops left and the people who were supposed to protect them were gone, things got really bad for them. Now, there was a lot of states in the South who tried to prevent African Americans from voting. And in this video, you're going to hear how they pulled some like rabbits out of the hat and basically used the law to kind of weasel the way through things. Now, under the 15th Amendment, it states that no one can be denied the right to vote due to their race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Now, just because someone was a slave 20 years ago doesn't mean, hey, you can't vote because you were a slave. No, that wasn't going to fly. Just because you were black, you were Latino, you were, you know, Asian, if you were born in this country, you had the right to vote. Now, it doesn't state in the Constitution, the amendment, that the government, state or federal or local, can't require that citizens be literate or own property in order to be able to vote. Now, here's the thing. This is a big thing that was a big misconception, that only poor black people could vote or couldn't vote. Sorry. The thing is, poor white people couldn't vote either, because a lot of them were supporters the populist movement, and the populist movement basically was a movement to increase farmers' political powers and in the legislative too, because hey, they wanted some say so in things that surrounded about them. And you have to remember, a lot of these poor white people and poor black people, they were farmers. They had just a little plot of land and they tried to make a living off that. But the thing is, they didn't have any really political power. That was up to the topper people, the people with plantations. They had a lot of say so. They had a lot of things going their way. A lot of laws, legislation, policies that was created by the state and the federal government. It went their way, not to the poor, uh, tiny farmer. So when the populist movement was pushed, um, it got pushed back, and that angered a lot of, like, basically, in a sense, plantation owners, white people, and they saw the poor black people, or sorry, poor white people, as they're trying to cause problems. Now, there were several things that were in place to stop black people from voting and poor white people. One of them was the poll tax, which basically was a $2 tax that was required from all citizens who were registering to vote. The thing is, a lot of poor farmers could not just spend $2 to go register to vote. It was not that essential. They're like, I need that $2 for whatever it may be. Um, but there were some that paid $2. Now, those who paid the $2, some of them may have thought, "Hey, that's it. I paid my $2. I'm good." But what ended up happening is there was some other steps that were in place. One of them was the literacy test. Now, this basically was that the state required that the voters be able to read and understand the state's constitution. So they would have somebody go, "Hey, like say it's a middle class white person." They would tell them, "Read the first sentence of the Constitution." Okay, and it's a state constitution. So they'd be reading going, "We, the people of Mississippi, do by declare our statehood." And someone asks them, "What does that mean?" "Oh, well, basically we're a state." "Congratulations, you get to vote." Now, for many African Americans and poor white people, they couldn't read, and these people knew it. So, just to be certain, they would give them the hardest parts of the Constitution. Sorry, and basically have them read it and analyze it and spill it back. But here's the thing: even if they got it right, the person giving the exam would probably see, like, what? That's not exactly what it says. Because there's nothing that said it's based off what it says. It's what the interpreter, the person hearing it, says. "Oh, my judgment says that you didn't understand this. You didn't really get it." And so a lot of black people um, did not get to vote. Uh, but the thing is, this is where it gets a little interesting. There were some white people who still didn't, who paid the poll tax, who didn't pass the literacy test, and they weren't the poor white people. They were other people. So they would basically be told, "Well, did your grandfather vote?" And these people would be like, "Yeah, my grandfather, my father, they voted." "Great, you can vote too." Even though they failed at the other stuff, they can still vote. Now, this is truly the beginning of when segregation happens, and it really starts to separate the whites from the blacks. Um, and segregation, if you don't know already, is one of the things that is notorious in the South, and it deals a lot with racism. Okay, so this picture you see on the right, that's actually a poster that was put up in the South. And if you see, it says, "Be ready to vote, pay your poll tax, or apply for exemption," which basically meant if you don't have to pay, if you, let's say, some circumstances. And chances are that was only for white people, not blacks. So that is probably one of those stipulations where it only served some. And I'm sure they came up with some reason that a black person would be exempt from that.